Welcome to the New Meli Pulse, where we are uniting communities on common ground.
We're telling stories, sharing information, and spotlighting people making an impact in our community.
New Meli is our heart, but the Pulse beats far beyond our city limits.
Okay, so we're back for another episode at the New Meli Pulse. This is going to be part 2 of an amazing little mini interview series that we have with Bill Carrier from Citizens for Smart Growth in St. Charles County. We've already had a lot of spirited conversation with him. He brings a wealth of information about many things we have no idea about that he's now bringing to light too. And in this episode, we're going to keep uncovering that.
Yeah, so let's pick back up and let's finish the conversation.
Well, Bill, I want to say thank you for all the things that you've done. I'm not even privy to, I'm sure, all the long hours you've spent at night, and all the organization. And it sounds like you're getting more involved and going to be able to make a bigger impact. It sounds like your organization wants to spread its impact and broaden, as you use that word. I'd like to know a little bit more about the organization. So, how long have you guys been established?
So we established ourselves kind of as an ad hoc group in, let's say, April of 2023.
Okay.
April of 2023.
So you guys just 2 years old, really?
Right. And then several months after that, as we started to first we asked for donations, and we said, well, wait a second, we need to formalize this organization into a LLC if we're going to be taking donations.
And what were you taking donations for?
Well, that's as the legal challenge against annexation appeared to be more the route that we were going to have to go.
So let me get this straight. A couple of retirees sit back, sipping your wine or your bourbon at night, and you're telling your wife, "Hey, I think I'm gonna sue somebody who's a lot bigger than I've ever thought about suing." And then you guys are all in agreement, and then you decide to solicit for donations so that you don't have to pay all the attorney fees out of your pocket. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there of what motivates that amount of. That's pretty noble action, I think.
Well, thanks. I think it just shows the value that those of us who live in the more, I don't want to say it's unique to the folks who live in the more rural areas of St. Charles County. I think anybody who lives here, some people really appreciate where they live and really like to walk out at night and look up at the stars or whatever, or find a place to live that has the best schools for their kids or whatever. And when you see that threatened by, I don't want to call it profiteering because that's a specific term with specific definitions and impacts. But when you see that threatened by folks who basically just want to, hey, we can make a lot of money if we take this chunk of property and take it from its natural state to rooftops, you want to stand up and say, no, I think there's a smarter way to do this. And I know the term smart growth gets thrown about now. It's funny, and I think it's maybe indicative of the impact that we're having in that in this last election, there were candidates calling themselves smart growth candidates that if you look at their track record, they're not. And so we're starting, that's why we started to become a little bit more vocal about who we support and who we don't, because there were people taking that moniker and really using it improperly.
Right.
Well, and I love that because I think kind of going back to part of the issue on the citizen side is having the time to do all the research and all. So to have an organization of people that are in your community that that are doing this because it's also impacting you in a way, to me, that's I always love going to seeing the updates on your guys' page because then I know okay, here's the information, and if I have time or want to go look deeper, here's the link to go look deeper. And I think and to the political, because that's something that Wyatt and I have talked about with this podcast is
accessibility.
Right, and we don't want this to be a political podcast either, but unfortunately, we kind of have to talk about some of those politics. Right. And we have to talk about the people who are running. That was a conversation we had about really understanding the values of these people, because do they truly have a public servant's heart and are trying to really serve the people and do the best for our county, or are they really purely there for capitalistic gains because they just want to grow? And we just saw that 2024 benchmark. We're looking at these cities in other states that have 25% 10-year growth, and that's who we want to benchmark after, just because of the number.
Right. And
I'm like, but what? And then not to mention, that was something else we talked about, is the farmland. And that's out here in this agricultural area, the numbers is that we're losing 2,000 acres of farmland a day in the US.
Right.
And we can see that happening out here. And I thought that was really interesting. There was an article, two things. One, when the Double D stuff was going up, one of the reasons that the landowner was talking about selling was because the farmer could not get the tractor out onto the road to get to that property to maintain the property. So there's a problem. Well, then now we've just heard with what came up this last Monday at the council for the newest development, that farmer is having the same exact problem. He cannot farm his land because of the development, which is why he's selling it.
Right.
And so it's like,
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will. I regard it as just a series of dominoes. That one just precipitates the other, and ba-boom, ba-boom, it just keeps going. There's a very interesting article in the 13 May issue of the Mid-Rivers News magazine, and talking about development and how some officials are finally starting to tune into the public's view of rapid development. But there are other officials that say, well, wait a second, the landowners has rights. They can sell their land. I've never been a farmer. I can understand if you're being compressed from all sides, your next generation or the third generation down doesn't want to do farming. That's a way of passing on your legacy to them by selling the property, and so on and so forth. But this gets back again to land use and master plans. O'Fallon Mayor Bill Hennessy said, quote, "It's kind of tough when something's zoned the way it's zoned," end quote, noting the property owner's rights must be accommodated. Absolutely. Nobody's in our organization is telling property owners they can't sell. However, they need to understand that there are land use regulations. An important part of this whole process is the rezoning of the property from agricultural to what? And usually it's to whatever the developer wants. Right. Whether it be low density, which is up to 4 houses per acre, or medium density, which is next increment up from that. And so, they're kind of talking around the edges that, we respect the property owner's rights, but you're involved in the rezoning as a county official or a city official. And so, we know kind of where this is going if you take it from agricultural to R3A medium density residential housing, right? Wentzville Mayor Nick Guccione, I apologize, pronounce his name properly, it said it's crucial to balance this growth with respect for property owners' rights. And again, I think that's, in some ways, this can be interpreted wrong, but I'm going to say it anyway. That's a bit of a cop-out, right? It's going to an argument that, legally, you go, oh, sorry.
Right.
Property owners have rights. I can't listen to you guys anymore because they can sell to whoever they want to sell. Whereas, what we're talking about is understood. The property owners have rights and they can sell to whoever they want to sell to, but they also sell within a market. and adjoining residents, the community at large, our views of how that land is used and our participation in the government processes for approving such is part of the market forces, right? And so that's the way we can influence that. We're not saying, deny somebody their rights, but recognize that we live in a relatively free market. And, if one of these property owners were saying, I'm going to build, a radioactive pig processing plant right here, all of these officials would be saying, oh, no, you don't. We're not going to do that. There's, other considerations that need to be added to that. I'm not saying take property owners' rights away, but it's not like the conversation stops there.
It sounds like really what needs to happen then is that there's a lot of education that needs to happen. And I'm curious, you guys, you have a lot of irons in the fire litigating. You have a lot of irons in the fire with, keeping tabs on all the current events. But it doesn't seem like there would be a shortage of education, but I'm curious, what are you guys doing to educate people? What is the mission, of your organization in terms of education? And if you have a mission statement, we'd love to hear that too. But, because at the end of the day, I think I have a funny little anecdote. I live next to a farmer, and I was talking to him about a lot of the development and, and they're just like, oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. These are people who there's roads named after them. These are people who, this is their area, but they don't have any concept of any way that they can participate. And I think what breeds in a lot of people, it breeds in her, listen to her in the last episode, it's anger. Because at the end of the day, and it's in sadness because you feel helpless. But I think what we're trying to do definitely here at the Pulse, and I'm curious to hear how you guys approach this problem, is that when people have information, when they're empowered with information, it's the chessboard's a lot more even. So I'm just curious, how are you guys approaching education in your organization, and then where do you see that taking a role?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and something I'm going to take away from this conversation, and that it's something we probably need to spend a lot more time thinking about and starting to act on. We've typically used our Facebook page and whatever coverage we can get in the media, and the media has been, I think, very good with some exceptions in terms of presenting both sides, right. Both the online media, the print media, and then the TV media, and they've attended, the more uproarious council meetings and things like that, and that helps get the word out. And we've increased our support base because of that attention, which is great. Like you said, we recognize we can't be a one kind of issue in terms of the development organization. We have to look much broader and represent more of the county. That stretches us very thin, right? Sure. There's still 4 of us who are co-managers of the organization. Without going into details, that it's harder on the guys who have jobs.
Sure.
Retired guys, we've got time in the morning to punch things out and research, and I'm, again, enough of a geek to want to read, annexation legislation and land use regulations ad nauseum. That's okay. I like doing that and really understand what it really requires. But I think we got to somehow do a better job at educating the broader public and getting people to think about it. That's the hard part, right? Is how do we squeeze into somebody's daily life? And your podcast is a great opportunity to do that. But how do we squeeze into somebody's daily life going, just think about this? Because I used to do it too. I used to live closer in St. Charles County, and you'd drive by and, oh, that farm gone, yeah. Doesn't exist anymore, and I'd drive on my way to work and think about work stuff, right? Or family stuff or whatever. And now, having moved out into the middle of that rural area and then see this pressure upon it from all directions, it does cause you to think, what is the future going to look like?
And it is hard for some people to have that extra problem on their shoulders.
Absolutely.
Think about it. It's like, oh man, my kid's sick. That's problem one. We're low on money this month. That's problem two. Oh, the development. That's a problem I can choose to not pay attention to. I can choose to be an ostrich.
Right.
And I think and put my head in the sand. I feel like there is always a more perfect way to describe a problem and to make it relevant. So that's my issue, my biggest issue with all authority in government. I see you guys doing a phenomenal job at trying to tackle this, is that the information isn't accessible. And if you're going to make something accessible, your job doesn't go with writing a great documentation and then publishing it. It means spending as many waking moments as possible, as feasibly possible, retranslating the information always to reach a broader public. Right. Because if you don't do that, then it's just your circle, and no, I'm not going to go read. I'm not going to read, your annexation legislature. I'm not going to.
Right.
And there's hundreds out there who might, but there's thousands who probably won't.
And it's really interesting, in the same article, Mayor Guccione said, quote, "We do take the residents' concern to heart, but you might have 20 people show up that are opposed to something that doesn't speak for the 50,000 people in the community," end quote. Well, to your point, right? We connected with 20 people who had the time to process this and maybe were just by proximity more impacted by it than others. So they show up. But what he appears to say here is, hey man, if you don't show up, your opinion doesn't count. And it's all those others that drove by and had that thought, oh man, another farm gone or another open field gone or whatever, and now it's houses, but had to continue on with their daily lives. That doesn't mean that it's only those 20 people in the community.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I feel like that's a really bold statement to make of that doesn't count for the 50,000, but you're making an assumption for the 50,000.
Right.
And so you can't have it both ways. And also so you want 50,000 emails coming to you? Is that let's really think about this and what does that, and I feel like that's kind of the same mentality I got. I remember being at the O'Fallon meeting, and one of the councilmen had said there, or citymen, I guess are they still councilmen, that when they were talking about that tall tree development and annexing it, that even though all of us that live out here currently were speaking against it, nobody from his O'Fallon district was there to speak to it, but nobody from your district lives out there. So that's why I know. Now there was one person there to speak for it, but it's they don't live out there. They're not driving those double D roads every day that are already stressed, that don't have, it's just.
Well, you used the word earlier, and it's a great word, self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. And that's not, I think it's important, that's intentional. Come on, these guys who are doing this are businessmen. Mm-hmm. They're smart. They're not stupid. Right. Don't pull the cloth over my eye, bro. This isn't how it works. You're doing this intentionally, and it's starting to aggravate many people because you're intentionally creating conditions that serve you. And then when the people who are in the conditions that don't serve them, and they're trying to poke their way out and be well, hey, that's not right. Maybe we should, then it's oh no, sweep that under the rug, and we're not going to deal with that. I think that's the bigger, broader issue is now people who have maybe taken a peek at this and have understood the issue a little bit. There's this fork that happens where, some of my closest family would be some of the most passionate supporters, but they see no purpose. So I guess that brings me to a question that I have for you is what do you, in your professional opinion, doing this now for 2 years, being involved in a suit at law, what can people do? What can they really do? Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's actually all that matters. What can everybody do here? Because it's going to take a village to make it happen. So what do you recommend that we do?
Yeah, so first is awareness. Awareness in our Facebook group, Citizens for Smart Growth in St. Charles County, is a good way of kind of getting the broader picture. I will say it's a Facebook group, and sure. So you have to put your filter on, right? And you have to or put your kind of analytical mindset in and go, is this just opinion or is this fact or whatever, right? And there's a lot of issues that get brought up there that may be important, but we try to prioritize which ones we're working. So gathering information, and we're not the only place. The transcripts from the city and the county planning and zoning meetings. If you can't attend those meetings, you can see the minutes. You can watch the YouTube recordings of them. And so if you can't come down or you couldn't be there that night, you at least know how the dialogue went.
Sure.
What the considerations were, and then you can judge the quality of those considerations, right? Was that kind of a just knee-jerk reaction? Hey, new development, approved? Or was there really some thought put into the pluses and the minuses and how many people from, the local community spoke and what did they say and so on and so forth? You can watch that. But again, that takes time out of your day. Yeah. But it's a commitment that I think people need to do. Better than that is if until this all came up, I had never attended a county council meeting, and wow, when I first started attending them, I was like, okay, and trying to follow again with an engineer's brain, the logic and the conversations and how decisions were made. I think it's something that all residents should do occasionally, is to attend one of those and just get a pulse for, we all elected these folks. And so the question is, how are they following their processes? What are their considerations? How do they discuss and then finally come to some consensus on what the plan forward is going to be, whether it's approval or denial or a new plan or whatever the case may be? It's good to watch how the sausage gets made occasionally, just so you can appreciate it. And at least it gives you either A, well, looks good to me, I trust them for the next thing that comes over, or B, hey, wait a second, what about, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then have maybe a more one-on-one dialogue with these elected officials. I think that's a good thing for folks to do occasionally. I'm not saying, turn your life upside down and make it your reason for being, but it's good to have a firsthand appreciation for how decisions get made. Going back to the tall tree thing, from day one with the original developer and the attorney, the original developer never spoke in support of that development. He had an attorney do all that for him, who had a unique way of basically telling people, look, you either do what we say or we're going to, annex it to a municipality. It was a very threatening approach that backfired, I think, on them. It painted the county council into a corner. But then they came back with this divide and conquer strategy, and that attorney never appeared again. But other attorneys who are a little bit more sophisticated in their delivery, and they even, when we tried to negotiate with Lombardo, they said, hey, look, Citizens for Smart Growth, they met with Lombardo and Lombardo, did what they said, which to a degree, I think we had some influence there, but they certainly had a hard line drawn as to what they wouldn't do. And that all gets back to density and the number of homes and the size of the lots. But they learned through the process too, right? So it is interesting to see how this has evolved. Before we showed up, it was just a machine, right? Developers came in, they had, a rough presentation. City or county councils would look at it and go, yep, boom, and move.
That makes me think that actually the first time that I went to a council meeting was probably a year or two before that, when Bush Brewery first came up on Benny Road.
Yes.
And I paid attention there, and that was kind of that mentality there of just like, nope, we're just, we're going to go ahead and do this. And it was like, even again, citizens are there like, wait a minute, the roads, Benny's got that really weird like turn over the culvert that there is no room for anything extra, it's like, but same thing kind of similarly happened. Like eventually there was a little pushback at first, but then eventually it got approved, and it was weird how it kind of got approved. It was like all of a sudden, and then here they are, they got built, and we're like, okay.
It kind of followed the process. I will say the outcome of that one has been pretty benign for the local residents who live around it. Give credit to Mr. Bush for how he ultimately implemented that.
I was gonna say, because I think the plan, what he actually built is a little bit different than what he originally had proposed. But that was, I guess my point to that was that this architect had come up and had these like 3D renderings and all this stuff, and it's like, but then you could tell that there was still a lot of the front end, like I would think more detailed information seemed to be kind of looked over, and it was like, well, wait, this seems like chicken before the egg kind of thing. Like,
yeah, it ended up being not the big scary monster.
Yes, I agree.
But I think, again, market forces played a significant role in that as well. And back to your point about, what should our organization be doing more? I do think we need to spend more time. I don't want people to take away from this that I'm talking down to them that we got to educate the public. I think it's just helping with awareness.
100%.
And ensuring as you either decide to come to a meeting and speak your mind or not, and I credit all the people for doing that. And sometimes the passion that they show, they get choked up.
Yeah.
And I have enough experience with public speaking not to do that, even though there's red lights going off in my brain as I'm talking. But I feel very proud of the people that, despite maybe their concern or their anxiety about public speaking, get up and speak their mind and do get choked up and have to struggle through that. And really, it shows the depth of care that they have for this community that we live in. And that's what we're trying to do, is facilitate that for people. And hopefully, again, what we're trying to do is just strike a balance. Let's preserve the quality of life for St. Charles County residents, whether they be existing or their future and they're coming in. Let's have a good quality of life for those folks while we use our precious resources, because this county is limited in resources. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people that view it as this can just go on forever, and it can't. We all know it can't. Mm-hmm. So what we're trying to do is at least make people aware, hopefully get them involved, and strike that balance. And if we find that the elected officials we have are unwilling or incapable of striking that balance, then we turn back to the public and go, are these the right people to represent you?
One question I've had about, like, on that side of, like, the political side, there's no term limits, right, for any of these positions?
You can ask me a question that I won't have.
You don't have the answer to. Oh my gosh, I'm shocked. Because I know Elman's been our executive council executive for a long time, right? I mean,
right. He's county executive. He has made it clear that he is not going to run again.
Right.
You stumped me. Okay. I would have to go back and see. I don't believe that there are term limits for council members or the county executive.
And then there's no, like, conflict of interest clause either, right? For, like, so that they can work for developers on their day job, but then also serve on this council.
That is true. I know the Planning and Zoning Commission has to take an oath of office that It's not bad. I've read it. But yeah, we do see, elected officials both at the city level and at the county level that you would go, well, wait, what you do in your day job and what you do in this public service job, those are kind of close together. Right. I will not accuse anybody of trying to use their elected position to feather their nest on their private side, their business side. I don't think that occurs, but I do think that if you're coming from what I'll call, again, the development industry, you have a mindset and an appreciation for what that industry does.
Right.
That I don't think it can't help but sometimes influence you one way or the other.
Yeah, your values are different. It's like what we were talking about in episode 3. We said, you really just ask the question, like, is this gentleman or woman who I'm electing, do they share my values? Right. Do they share my common values? And I mean, there's probably a lot of people. I mean, I probably share values with a lot of them. I'm sure that there's ones that I don't. Yeah. And
I'm an aerospace engineer. I like airplane noise. When I lived closer into St. Charles, and there was a chance of one of the airports developing bigger and everything, and people were signing a petition and everything. At that very time, I happened to have an airplane wing stuck in the roof of my garage that I was hanging on to a buddy of mine. It influenced the way I thought about growth of an airport. Right. That other folks go, yikes, airports, they're noisy, and I got airplanes flying low over my house and all this crazy stuff. But with my familiarity with airplanes and aviation, like,
different. Yeah, cool. That's a good point.
No, that is. I like how you illustrated that. I mean, it causes this question. It's a lot for people to, I think, stomach at times of how much they really need to take an active role in shaping their land, shaping their community. Because it sounds like what I keep hearing through your voice and through many different voices, through things Liv will say, through what will come up in our podcasts, through councilmen, is that just get involved. I remember one of the aldermen from St. Peter's City telling me, she's like, people just need to get involved. Because I was kind of talking to her about some of the stuff, and she's just like, they just have to get involved.
Yeah, and I do think I would encourage people, because we do have the county executive election coming up next year, to really do some good quality checking on those candidates, because it is a very powerful position.
Yeah.
Very powerful position, and on this matter and other matters that affect everybody in the county, and just do some research on who you think shares your values. To your point, I think that's absolutely critical. And then 2, has a track record of
performing that way.
Performing, doing acting as they spoke, and then acting in a way that's effective.
Right, because we have to trust them. Absolutely. We said that in the last episode, and that's a lot to ask. I mean, the shake of a hand is something that is, it's almost a rarity these days for people to honor that. And our word is very important. And, you see it's like it's commonplace in the presidential campaigns. And you're like, oh, they say all these things, but we know maybe they'll only, on a good day, 30% of what they said in their campaign they might do, And this has just been the track record for many years.
And that's where I think, as opposed to at the national level or even the state level, this is a local level. You can go to these meetings.
Right.
You can speak. You can, at the end, approach a council member or a planning and zoning commission member and have a dialogue. Mm-hmm. Boy, talk about a way of really having people say, oh, they won't listen. Man, have the conversation with them. I have never had any of these officials, whether we're kind of on the same side of a particular topic or directly opposed, I've never had any of them say, I ain't talking to you. And so, hey, have the conversation and be ready to back up your views with some facts or just, again, how you deeply believe in your heart things should be and why you moved out here and the lifestyle that you leave and you want your kids to leave and that kind of thing.
And I think going back to you talking about, some of these statements that the citizens had said and going up with these very emotional stories, to me, like, those are the impactful things. And I think, and like you had made a comment earlier that touched on, like, it triggers like anger and sadness. And really, I've been thinking a lot about this, like when I cruise the back roads and love to put the windows down and listen to the music and appreciate the farmland and the rolling hills and all that. It is a sadness. Like, when I really think about it, when it comes down to like what is like my feelings inside, it is a sadness because we're changing things that we will not be able to change back.
Yeah, it's not hard.
Like, this is not just like, well, maybe in a couple of years if this doesn't work out, right? Bring up the concrete. Like, no, we're taking farmland. We're taking a way of life that people, and that's how I had shared my story. I originally wanted to be a city girl living downtown, and my husband and I bought our house out here, and I have fallen in love with this place, and now I want more land. I love the quiet. I absolutely love going outside and looking at the stars and feeling so humbled that, wow, like, my like literal favorite thing is we have a big field next to us, or we did. Now they did develop it. They stayed at 5-acre lots, so I am super happy about that, and they're beautiful homes. But the fireflies, the lightning bugs,
Absolutely.
like they're, and that's always been something I remember in my childhood. I was telling them about back in O'Fallon and Jeannie's custard stand, and they had the little putt-putt golf there. We would go and play, and we'd get our ice cream, and we'd play putt-putt, and we could catch fireflies. I would doubt that you could do that over there in that area now. But that is, it's like that charm and that, it's something so silly, but it's not. It's so beautiful. Like when it's like getting dusk out and the fireflies are like literally lighting up our whole tree line in the field, it is like, I always equate it to like a nature's concert. Like when you go to a concert and people all have their lights on, it's literally like that. And I'm a video person, so I've been trying to capture it on video. I've been trying to capture, and it's like such a hard thing. Like with the light sensitivity and how much light is going on, you can't. It's hard. You can't.
Yeah.
And that's something that is like, I remember one person at the O'Fallon meeting. She had talked about the song Paving Paradise. And it's like, it is just, and she got it choked up, and it is so like, again, to your point, and we're not saying either on this podcast that we're going to stop growth. We know that it's going to grow. We know that we have to evolve, but we've got to start having conversations and making it a conscious conversation where people think, those farmers are really like, it's just going to happen. But does it have to happen that way?
Right.
Because we see, just like they've been talking about how, people moving out of St. Louis City and into the county and now out to our county, but then when you overdevelop this, then they're just going to keep moving. We're just going to keep the self-fulfilling prophecy moving. And at what point do we stop for a quick second? I know we're all busy, and I know we all have 10 tons of things going on, but like, we have to, as like part of why we're here on this earth, of like, let's stop for a minute and have an intentional conversation.
Right, and this is I love how you just brought that back. Like, this is our earth. Like, it's really easy to forget that like we're sharing a common planet here. And if we get one disease cell, it's gonna go and affect other disease cells. It's just how our body works.
Right.
So why not make our county, why not make your home, why not make your family like a beautiful place to live?
And I would really even like to, get more of the farmer's perspective, because, like you had talked about, there's a lot of different things affecting them too. Like now, so the development is affecting them, but then also like the generational, like, do you have family that wants to take it over? And if not, is there somebody that wants to farm the land? Like there, and then, taxes, like I've heard a lot of comments about, now they're getting taxed out of the area. And like, so I think there's a whole other like aspect to that facet. But I just think like stopping for a minute, having the conversation, is this really the right thing for our county and our community? And can we do this a little bit better? You look at N, and they have the David Hogle Parkway coming, but that development's supposed to stop at Z and N. So there's nothing planned other than, to my knowledge, there's nothing planned other than the stoplight at Hopewell and N from that N corridor up to 4061 on the Wayne Haven side.
Right.
Correct? And so it's like, so now you're going to widen the David Hopewell N on the other side to bring more traffic in, and then it's going to get to Z and N, and then what's going to happen?
So there's a similar project being proposed, which is the Lake St. Louis Boulevard extension.
Yes.
Down south to the intersection of Highway DD and Dyer Road. And that extension cuts through a natural spring-fed wetland. It crosses through the remnants of a historic, one of the first free African-American settlements post-Civil War. And then it cuts through a neighborhood where those particular homeowners paid a premium for lots that backed up to this this area, this green space, and now they're going to have, per the plan, this extension cutting through at an elevation where if they stand on the one side in their backyards, they're going to be looking up at traffic, cutting through. And so we've are in opposition to that, as you would imagine. We've contacted the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and filed petitions, formal petitions, with them, as well as the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, trying to get somebody to look at this and go, this does not make sense. Again, as an engineer, I looked at the traffic study for that particular proposal, and if you look at their figures of merits or kind of their objectives, what are they trying to do? A lot of it boils down to right now where Highway DD and Dyer Road run into each other. Dyer Road is seen as a reliever to Highway N because everybody knows Highway N is going to get nutty. Oh, yeah. And yeah, they have plans to expand it and make it better. Great. But again, as we talk about, development leads infrastructure in almost every case. And so they're looking at then putting more traffic down Dyer Road. So then how do you get Dyer Road traffic to I-64, where everybody wants to go into St. Louis County to go to work? And so they're thinking, instead of overloading Highway DD, which is already going to be overloaded due to all this development, we'll bring in Lake St. Louis Boulevard. And, you look at the traffic study and the extension. They looked at various options. One of the options is either put a roundabout or a traffic light at the Dyer Road to Highway DD option, or Highway DD intersection. That option wasn't even looked at. It was always, no, we got to have that intersection also have a feeder to I-64. Well, if anybody has sat in I-64 traffic, either going east in the morning or going west, coming back home, it's the I-64 traffic.
Right.
Adding more feeders to an already overloaded highway system is kind of, what's it really going to do?
Right. And now that expansion project has started, the 40 and 70 all together, and that's going to be 4 years, I believe, is the projected time frame of. We're already seeing some of that traffic hitting on N and Z of people trying to bypass some of that already, and it's barely even gotten started.
Right. And then the other scary thing they like to do is, of course, add subdivisions onto other subdivisions and then connect to the feeder roads through the other subdivisions. Yeah. So now you've got people, in the morning or in the evening zooming through subdivisions trying to get to their subdivision.
Right.
Which creates a potential for some issue there. People need to, again, I think the bottom line is people need to stay aware of these things. At the very least, look at what's on the agenda, because we wouldn't, if the county didn't have a process to at least put signs out that says, hey, there's a public meeting that affects you, don't ignore them if you see them.
Well, and so they don't have to send you letters?
We did ultimately get letters too, but it was those notifications on the roadways that everybody was like scratching their head going, what the heck is this about? And then you start to look at these big open fields and you go, uh-oh. Yeah. So I think it's awareness. It's trying to insert it into your life and take some time to do it. Because I'll tell everybody out there listening, once the process starts, it moves, and it moves with energy. And what I mean by that is the proposal is made. It goes to planning and zoning. They do their thing. Planning and zoning typically they only recommend. They don't have the power to approve or deny. They just make a recommendation to either the county council or the city council, as it may be. And a lot of times they've recommended denials because they've got into the details. and then it goes to the council, and the council is like, no, it's good, and it's been approved. So once that process starts, once you start to hear rumblings, you have to realize that you're at least 6 months, if not closer to a year behind already.
Wow. Okay.
Because the wheels have been turning.
Sure.
Developers and landowners have been talking. Utilities have been involved. They don't come to planning and zoning with, hey, what about?
Right.
No, they got it worked out. Which I respect them for at least that.
Yeah.
But you have to remember they have it worked out to maximize their benefit.
Well, that was one thing that really kind of shocked me a little bit, or just really made me aware of how far ahead they are. Is at, I think it was the O'Fallon meeting when he shared that map for the Highlands, and they had shared those like 3 tracts of land that they had their eyes on for annexation. And I think that they had their eyes on, I think like one of the maps was dated like 2021 or 20, they had been aware of these tracts of land and had their eyes on them for a while. So that is like, you don't realize it as a citizen if you're not in the developer world. They're
these guys are, these folks are very accomplished business people. Mm-hmm. They know what they're doing. They have a lot of experience. They know how the process works. They do, just from the fact that this isn't the only development they've done. So there's a relationship with the local officials. I'm not saying it's an inappropriate relationship. I'm just saying they know them. They've worked with them before. It's like any of us in our professional lives. If you've worked with an individual before, you got a leg up on the next project that you're working on because you know them. And so, I don't think that's inappropriate, but it does facilitate this overall process and facilitate the approval of these developments.
It's just like attorneys and judges; they all play golf together.
And again,
it's not bad.
That's not bad.
It's not bad, but let's call a spade a spade. That's what's happened. It's not a bad thing, but they're friends.
We have to recognize that personal relationships count in business.
They do.
Absolutely.
I know that your time's wrapping up here. I want to end on just like one, kind of to the heart question. One of the things that I love, Liv coined this phrase, is we're taking off the jerseys.
The team jerseys.
The team jerseys.
Blue and the red jerseys.
And we really want to get back to the heart of just being people. So, Bill, I would love to hear, why are you doing this? What is your intrinsic motivation? And if not what's Smart Growth doing? Like, almost like stripping the labels, like, why are you doing this? What do you hope to see, as like you can kick back, your shoes are off and you got a beer in your left hand, you're sitting on your porch and you're like, it was a good day, and you can be like, I did my work. Like, what is that moment for you? And then why are you doing what you're doing?
Right. So, and you guys touched on it before. Fortunately, what keeps me going is I do have those moments where I sit on my back porch and I have a 3-acre lot off of Wilson Road. And the deer come through, the turkeys come through. I can hear the coyotes at night. That gives me the motivation. That's, again, why I moved out to this area. I love where I live. I love my house. I love my neighbors. And so, people always will say, well, if you want to be rural, move further out. And it's like, no, we're happy with where we are. We have a right to express, our views and stand up for what we believe in, just as much as anybody else. And so that, on a personal level, getting that reinforcement from the natural world that's right in my backyard keeps me going. But also, part of this, and again, it's the flaw in the engineering brain, which is basically this lifelong quest to achieve, did you make decisions? Did the people that you're involved with, did you make the best decision that you could? And I confronted that on a daily basis with my engineering career. as an executive and trying to educate and motivate and influence design teams that I worked with. And, did you gather all the necessary facts? Did you really understand the implications of your decisions? Did you analyze it properly? Did you talk to stakeholders in the process and really understand why they were involved and what they're trying to get out of it? So in the end, when we finally come up with a design or a decision, we know that we've done our due diligence, that we really appreciated both, the short term and the long term. Again, being an aerospace engineer, I was involved in the development of products that last 40 to 60 years, so similar to these developments, you can't undo these decisions, and so you hopefully make the best that you can, and that the people then that have to live with your product, both directly and indirectly, are truly benefiting from it. And they're not constantly going, who's the idiot that designed this? Because it's a mess.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
After the pomp and ceremony of, hey, it's been released and it's out there and it's initially working and everything, 20 years down the road, when it's showing its age, is it still doing a job?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm personally, hopefully, trying to do on this process, is influence people to make the best all-around decision, knowing that when everything's brand spanking new, it all looks great, and then over time, things get a little shop-worn, but, that's okay. Does it still serve a purpose? Does it still give people a quality of life and a lifestyle that they truly can appreciate? One of the issues that comes up in this a lot of times is, well, what you guys are talking about, you're denying, first-time home buyers the opportunity to move into the county. And again, that is not our objective by any means. We all know that real estate prices have gone up over time. There are a lot of areas in the county and in the municipalities that if people are looking for starter homes, there is an option, and Councilman Brazel touched on this at last Monday's council meeting in his remarks, in that there are other opportunities for a starter home than a brand new home in a new development. There are homes that need some TLC in established neighborhoods with mature trees and in good school districts and stuff that need somebody to move in and give them some tender loving care and brush them up, and they'd be a fantastic place to live. So, everybody has to decide what they want, but this, we could wax philosophic on, we've come a throwaway society where we continue to just consume and move out and ignore everything that's happened in our wake, and I think this should give people pause and go, what about reinvesting in some of those older, more established communities, taking a property that needs some effort and putting your own personal stamp on it?
That's what we even talked about last episode of, even from a commercial perspective, how many of these strip malls have we seen that have been developed that now are struggling to keep people in, but we're still building new strip malls. It's like, and that's kind of the same thing with that. I mean, my husband and I, when we looked at our house, now granted it was back in 2008, and so we had a very different economic housing situation, but we looked at the two situations. Do you want a little bit of land and you're probably going to have a fixer-upper, or do you want to move into a neighborhood that the house is built, ready to go, the kitchen's already been remodeled, well, it was just built in the last 10 years, so it's great, all that. And that was, our realtor did a great job of showing us both opportunities. And when we found our house, it was just like literally love at first sight. And there is that balance. And it's interesting talking about the starter home conversation, because these developments that they're building, which you and I don't have a say in, it's the developer creating these, they are not starter homes. Like that, am I correct in saying that those were starting at like $500,000 off of?
I don't know the specific. There's a fairly significant price difference between what's planned for the north and then the south. Okay. But Having said that, and again, saying, well, that's affordable and that's not affordable, I think that causes sometimes, people individually need to decide what's affordable and what's not affordable. If somebody tell them, oh, no, that's an affordable neighborhood. Well, wait a second. You're bringing your own situation to that discussion that I don't think is appropriate. But my point was, there are other opportunities for people to, if they're starting out or they're retiring and they want less. My wife and I failed miserably at that when we went from the old house to the new house. Our whole idea was to downsize by about 600 square feet. Well, guess what? We ended up with 100 square feet more, whatever. I think new grabs a hold of people, and I think, and of course, this whole development industry is much more focused on new than it is, it's a much smaller industry that's focused on remodeling and fixing up and that sort of stuff. But there's, I think, some real benefits to that approach and keeping those established neighborhoods well maintained and invested in and things like that.
It's a big philosophical concept, right? Because you can take the whole thing with the entire planet. Use what you got instead of having to just go and find this other thing. Use what take the resources that you have. I like your story is amazing, and I'm going to think of you forever and myself as the gatekeeper of the process of this. You seem like you are putting more than your due diligence in to account for people who aren't, and I think that's a noble cause.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm speaking again on behalf of the other co-managers of our organization and then all the supporters.
Well, what's really amazing too is that your motivation is I like to try to find common denominators. We try to find common ground here, and I'm a whole lot younger than you. I've lived a different life, but one thing I can already connect with you on is you have a connection with nature. Yep. And that is one of the things that you inspire you to do what you're doing. And I think at the end of the day, strip the black and blue or whatever jersey color you're wearing, it's like we all have a lot more of those common denominators, and banding over those rather than the miscellaneous, fine line details that at the end of the day, if we all just agreed on, we have these values that we all agree on. Absolutely. We're going to go a lot farther than being divided over one or two specifics.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. I've used that in my professional career. At one time was working for a guy, and people were like, I don't know how you two work together. He was in charge and I was his deputy, and because we had very different styles, very different personalities, and very different kind of set of priorities. I said, well, it's simple. So-and-so and I have you won't believe it, but we have a strong set of shared values. Now we approach those values differently, but when you actually ask us to get to the foundational things that drive us, you ask for our list, we have the same list. Now, my number one may be his number two and stuff like that, but it allowed us to work together. And in this whole effort, again, with political affiliations and opinions on all sorts of other issues, right? These days, if you want to find disagreement with somebody, you can find disagreement with somebody. That's real easy. But in this, I have been impressed how this has been just a lightning rod to bring people of so many different demographics, political views, stages in life, whether you appreciate nature or you're perfectly fine, in a high-rise apartment building or whatever. It really draws people together on this particular issue, and we stay focused on this particular issue. We don't really, it's so important to all of us that all the other stuff doesn't intrude to form cracks in our coalition.
Breaks the process then.
Yeah.
You can't start designing the product, until you have all the information from the stakeholders.
Exactly.
So I love that you're taking your background, you're applying your personal skills, your personal motivations, and you're using it to elevate and amplify a very common cause. How can people find out more? How can they get involved? How can they support you with a donation? Is this a Facebook reach out? Do you guys have a website? Is there, we can put any information that you have, we'll make sure we put in the descriptions here as well.
Yeah, I'll give you one of those. But very simply, we do have a Facebook group called Citizens for Smart Growth, St. Charles County. We also have a website. It's www.smartgrowthscc.com. That's a good way of staying, we try to use those as, I don't want to call them community calendars, but at least ways for people to know what's coming up. And I have to give credit to our 1,800 supporters on our Facebook group. They're a great network of going, hey, did you hear about this? And did you hear about that? And there's this over here. Because like you said, with just the four of us, we have a bandwidth problem now because it's just gotten so big.
You're preaching to the choir. We got you, man. We feel you.
And so that's great. And people can go to the website or the Facebook group. I encourage them on the Facebook group, participate, hit reply and tell us what you think
I will say I engage on that page a little bit, and I do really appreciate seeing a lot of other people's perspectives because they're not all the exact same. And so everybody brings a little something different. And I feel like so far, from what I've seen, as far as from citizens, very good conversations, very thoughtful.
We certainly, don't condone the attacking and that kind of stuff. We want it to be constructive, right? Let's share views, share perspectives, share information, and use that to help people. In the end, they have to make up their own minds.
Exactly.
Right? Whether they support a particular proposal or they're against it, and then what do they want to do about it? They want to come to a meeting, they want to write an email. That's entirely up to them. We're kind of laying the buffet table out and saying, hey,
here you go.
Have at it.
That's 100% something that's kind of what we're trying to do here too as well. And Wyatt and I just had a conversation at the market on Saturday that we have here out in the parking lot with a local mom, businesswoman.
She owns the New Melody Baking Company.
Yes, she does. Yeah. And she was like, she was very passionate too about this area and protecting it. But she made the comment about how I just feel so bad though, because I just don't have the time. And I'm like, don't feel bad. That is 100% all of us. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, because we know that there are people in our community that care. Right. We know that there are people in our community that are not happy with what has happened with the state of just trying to travel just drive from point A to point B in our area. Yep. So we're trying to make, like you said, put the buffet out there, now come to the table, take what you want, what you can, and then when you have time, do the due diligence that you want to, but then also here's the high level, send an email, here's the topic that you might be concerned about. You don't have to go through the 400 agendas or whatever, direct people to those places. And I think to your point when you said the education piece, it's definitely not looking down. I think people want to be educated. They just don't, some of them just don't even know where to start. Right. And so I think this is great. And, we're here in the Freedoms Community Center, so we would love to offer that to you guys. If there's any time that your groups want to have an in-person meetup or have a fundraising event or something, we would love to offer this space.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you so much.
And in whatever way that you need stuff shared as well, we have an equally large network. And we'd love to, a lot of our initiatives do center around food and community. But all those things require land, and that's what developments happen on, and so we share a very common denominator there, and we'd love to be able to, in whatever way that we can cross-promote, cross-message, because, your success is our success, and our success can be your success, and that's... Fantastic. Yeah, that's what the philosophy's about. So I really appreciate you taking the time. We've had a long, spirited conversation, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great. I really appreciate it.
We'll have to have you back on.
Yeah, too, definitely.
As things progress.
As things progress, like I said, we're in the evidentiary phase of our lawsuit against the city of O'Fallon and the property owners. And people, I will say, in that regard, people are like, what? You're suing the property owners? We have to. They were a party to the agreement. We can't just sue one side and not the other. And so while, again, we strongly believe in personal property and property owners' rights, they do operate within a greater world, the community, and we're here to kind of ensure that the community moves forward and not just elements of the community.
And your attorney fees are being paid for strictly by donations, correct? So really, I mean, even $5 goes a long way.
Whatever people can donate,
right?
You can do that on the website, or you can send a check. However you want to do it, we would appreciate it. Our expenses are almost all attorney fees. We do a little bit on public outreach for signs and things like that during elections and stuff like that, but we don't go crazy with making donations to candidates or that kind of stuff. We had to hire, we had to go to Hannibal, Missouri to find a surveyor who would, in our lawsuit, it's not just our opinion about whether this property complies with the requirements or not. You have to have an expert witness. And so we had to travel all the way to Hannibal, Missouri to find a surveyor who would work for us, because none of the local surveyors are like, well, I ain't doing that. Who are my normal clients? It's developers and property owners, and, we had to go pretty far out to find somebody who would look at our analysis and go, yeah, that's right, or you screwed up here, and here's the actual data or whatever.
Wow.
And that cost a good chunk of change.
Well, it's easy. It's sometimes people, it's the world we live in is a buying culture, is a consumer culture.
Right.
Sometimes it's easy to be like, send them a couple bucks. And that might be their 5 seconds on, instead I might sit on Facebook and be like, I'm going to read this article. They might be like, don't have time. Oh, there's a thing. Oh yeah, here, we all commit our attention different ways.
However they want to do it. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Bill. We appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Yeah. What an amazing conversation. We are really grateful for Bill and for everything that Citizens for Smart Growth in St. Charles County is doing.
Seriously.
You can directly support them and find out more information about them by heading over to their website, which is www.smartgrowthscc.com. Link will be in the description and everything. They also have a very active Facebook group. We encourage you to join.
Yep, we encourage you to join. On their website, you can get a lot of information as well. And then they do, if you want to donate, like Bill had mentioned, you can, on their website, I believe they have the information for mailing checks, but they also have a Venmo account that you can donate to as well. Or your time and just participating in the Facebook page as well is super helpful and beneficial. Sharing this out on your network of people in the community. And just wanted to share this little blurb they have on their sheet here. Citizens for Smart Growth in St. Charles County works to ensure development within southwestern St. Charles County supports growth, protects residents, aligns with existing land use, and preserves the rural character of our community. So huge kudos to them and all that they are doing for our community. I think, just like we've talked about a couple times on our series here of the power of when two or more people come together. And I think
these are just regular people that decided, hey, we don't.
Nobody is standing up for what we need to be standing up for, so we're going to step into that space. And I love that. And I think, those are some of my most favorite stories not just like with this, but like in history in general, of when citizens really unite and make impactful change. And even though things feel like we don't have that power anymore, we do. And so please interact with their group, share with their group. Join our pages, follow our pages too. We're going to bring them back on when there's more information to share with the story. But again, if you're just like looking for a place to try to better understand what's going on and how can you get involved, these are wonderful places to start.
Yeah, you heard his call to action for everybody was really simple. Just get involved in some way. And that might mean just, paying attention to a Facebook post, or that might mean, just attending one county council meeting because you've never been before. That might mean, doing some research because maybe you don't even know like how planning and zoning even works or even what it is. Mm-hmm. That just might mean a little bit of education. Whatever it is, taking a step, because as we talked about, we all share this land. We all share, so much more than what divides us. And we're taking off the team jerseys now here, especially at the New Melly Polls.
Yes.
We're finding that common ground. We're building those bridges. We're making community happen. And it takes all of us. It takes a village to make it work. So
it does. And so, like we say on every episode, if you have any comments, feedback, things that you want us to look into for you, or you have stories that you want us to share, please submit them on our website.
Exactly, newmellypulse.news. We got it right that time. We are here in Freedom's Community Center. Freedom's Community Center is the voice and the power behind the New Melly Food Co-op, the New Melly Farmers Market, the New Melly Pulse, and a whole lot of other community initiatives. We have educational classes here like yoga. We have experiential events like sound healing. We also have really practical offerings like subscription office spaces for rent, or if you need a space for your group to meet, we have a very large sanctuary space.
Budget-friendly wedding space.
Budget-friendly wedding space. We're trying to put into practice our vision of happiness for our community, and we're trying to make a space for it. And so it's not always just like what he said. It's not always the easiest road, when you're walking and you're taking a lot of effort. And like he said there's 4 people or 5 people right now that are the co-managers of the organization. He's like, it's a lot.
The bandwidth issue is there.
The bandwidth issues is there. So, we're looking as well for anybody who wants to get involved. That doesn't mean that you have to commit to anything that you don't want to commit to. It just means that if you want to participate in growing community, this is a space for you. Check us out. rfcc.org is where you can find all the info on the parent organization. And I think, check out the farmers market. And,
yoga. We got yogas going on. We've got all our events shared on our Facebook page and on our website. So check those out. And yes, please, we are openly inviting you to come be part of this space and come help us build a community that we're all proud to be part of.
Amen. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week.
Yep.
Till then.
Bye.